Hey, it's Sonia, and welcome to the SMARTA Podcast.
Because you clicked on the video, you already told me you're the type of person that is interested in performance, mindset transformation, and fearless leadership with someone that delivers results that last. And when I was researching today's guest, I was absolutely amazed by his background and how he transformed from one thing to the next so amazingly, fluently, and brilliantly. Today's guest is Rob Kalwarowsky. He's a globally sought-after executive coach, TEDx speaker, and author of Capitalizing on Chaos. And listen to this. From Japan to Australia, to Europe to the US, and even his home country of Canada, Rob has been changing the game for future 500 executives, C-suite leaders, and also Olympians and visionary entrepreneurs. He's a graduate of MIT with a background in mechanical engineering and management. And Rob also brings his discipline and focus of a former elite athlete in the game. He's a three-time academic All-American NCAA water polo and a former member of Canada's U18 national team. Now, that insane, rare blend of technical mastery and emotional intelligence is what allows him to work so fast and effectively, which means he's often delivering transformational results for his clients in just a few weeks. Whether it's through his executive coaching, his top-tier certifications, including Dare to Lead Practitioner, Fearless Organization Facilitator, and International Family Systems Coach, or through the 500-plus podcasts he's appeared on, Rob's message is crystal clear. Average isn't an option. Now, if you're ready to level up, lead boldly, and crush your goals with clarity and confidence, this episode is for you. But just before we begin, I have a small favor to ask you. Please could you double check you're subscribed to the YouTube channel and rate this podcast 5 stars so we can keep bringing amazing guests on the podcast and you can keep learning amazing wisdom. How does that sound? Rob Kalwarowsky, welcome on the SMARTA Podcast. It's great to have you on here.
Thanks for having me, Sonia. I'm excited to jump in with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. I can already tell, you've got this amazing landscape behind you. I can hear the birds. And it's going to be an amazing journey that you're going to take me and the listener towards on today. Where I want to take you first is, since your background is absolutely amazing and you've went in multiple different industries, like graduating from MIT, you've done elite athletics, coaching for Fortune 500 companies, and now you're also the author of Capitalizing on Chaos. For the person listening right now, I want you to give them the 3 top key takeaways that they can learn from your experience and what they're going to listen in today's episode.
Absolutely. The first tip is chaos is only in our minds. And it's really perception of reality, right? And so the way I like to describe it is there's overwhelm and there's some version of like overwork. And we can be overworked. We can have 10 meetings in a row. We can be slammed with deadlines. We can have everything going on, but we may not be overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. We may feel internally calm and just like, hey, this is what we got to do. We got to prioritize. We got to knock things off the list, whatever that is. And this translates to everything in our lives, whether that's, we're going into a job interview, we're applying to college, we're asking somebody on a date, we're trying to shoot for that next level job, or even like what you're doing is like asking folks on the podcast, doing interviews, writing your own books. It's all perception. And once we understand what's going on in our own minds and we're able to navigate that, that's how we can capitalize on chaos. Tip number 2, I'm human. It's a phrase I use and I teach my clients to use. Mm-hmm. It allows you to take your power and your control back. So when you're feeling that overwhelm, say I'm human. Because you are. The other side of it is a lot of us are raised as these high-performing, high-achieving, some version of a robot. And that was me, right? Like I did well in school, I did well in sports, I got into MIT, and then eventually in my career, I hit a level where I was struggling with my mental health. I suffered from depression, I had a suicide attempt, and then I really had to build back up. But at some point, we're going to always hit that wall. It's not a question of if, it's when. I'm human allows us, before we get to that place, one is to reconnect with, I'm not just a robot. And the other is, it's a nice, not incredibly scary way of asking for support. And so for me, I've talked about my suicide attempt on TED stages. It took me a while to get there, right? And so this level of vulnerability has been out there. I've practiced it. It's normal for me now. When you're first in these spaces where you feel alone, you feel like you're not understood, you feel like you're overwhelmed, you feel like you can't ask for help, saying I'm human and sort of using it. You can use it at work. You can use it with your partner. You can use it with your friends. It's an easier way to just unlock the door to get that support. The last thing is, or the third tip is self-leadership and choice. When we're in a state of internal chaos or fear, we cannot access our frontal lobe for decision making, for logic, for possibility, for innovation, for any of these things. That limits our ability to choose. For me, that locked me into a life I didn't want. Now, after being able to calm the internal chaos, I was able to move to Costa Rica. I was able to change industries. Like I was an engineer. Now I'm an executive coach. I was able to write a book. I was able to do a TED Talk. None of those things were possible for me before. And that's the final step, right? Is once we can calm our minds, we can expand our possibilities, and that allows us to do whatever we want.
Yeah. I agree. Once we can calm our minds, we can absolutely maximize our possibilities. I love the way you ended it on there because I want to take you on to what you said, about how the world is full of chaos and it's going on constantly around us, whether we're conscious of it or not. Then we go, especially as we go with our day-to-day lives and routines. And I wanted to ask you, touching upon university students that are just graduating and high school students, especially now in the world, that is hyper-connected and that sort of is counting for us to fall, and that is super easy for us to let go and get into the, step along into the wrong path, is for the young generation that is constantly dealing with this pressure. How can we start identifying and managing our own internal chaos?
Absolutely. The first thing is I would be very conscious of the media I consume. I do this as well, but I think especially we've seen studies, right, as social media causes anxiety, depression, or at least maybe not causes it, but increases the rates, right? And we're seeing things on there that are not necessarily real, right? We're seeing a 16-year-old who's made $10 million, right? It's like, that's not necessarily a real thing. It could be, but it's not for everybody, right? That's part of it. The other thing is to just tune into what is your mind telling you and what do you notice about when you feel good versus when you're not feeling good. And that's the first step into this realm of self-awareness, which is ultimately how we're going to start opening the door for managing our internal chaos, right? Is let's say I feel great when I'm, with a bunch of friends and we're playing soccer, right?
Yeah.
What is it? How can I translate that activity into either doing more of it, or how can I translate the elements of that into a work or school environment? Do I need to join teams? Do I need to make sure that my work is in teams and not individual? Do I need to study with other people? How do I translate that into my future, right? That's along the steps of, okay, now we're curating the environment around us for our own success.
I want to take you back to something that you said, that the media you consume affects you, because in the end, your perception of life is the reality that you've molded yourself through your experiences, your actions, and your behaviors. And I saw, you made me remember about this shocking study that I saw that by 2030, I think it was a shocking rate, like 2 out of 3 families will have children that unfortunately suffer from autism because of the extended use of social media and its presence in our lives. And that's why I want to talk to you now about self-leadership and how important it is for us to take that accountability, because in the end, we do have the full choice of putting our phones down at the table, eating more present and fully in the moment with our loved ones, especially because you say that every form of worry and uncertainty is processed personally. Can you tell me about self-leadership and how it's so important into playing the role of transforming the fear into a forward motion?
Absolutely. And this really is exactly what you mentioned, Sonia, right? It's choice. And the biggest tip I can give folks out there is when you're coming up to a decision point, is lean into what is the voice inside your head, because there are sometimes you're going to hear different voices. It's totally normal. You're not crazy. We all hear them, right? But it's like for me, when I was in school, it was like my parents said, hey, get A's in school so you can get into the best college, so you can get a great degree, so you can get a job, so you can get married, right? And then you'll have a stable income, a house, a dog, and 1.5 kids, right? And you'll be happy. And I had a version of that, and I was depressed, and I felt trapped in a life that wasn't mine, right? And that's where the choice starts to come in, is wherever these stories are coming from, you need to be aware of how you're processing decisions. And when you make a decision, if it makes you feel good, there was a reason for that. If it makes you feel poorly, there's a reason for that. And so even with like social media use, like I had a client who he doom scrolled, and he's like 35 years old, right? So it's not like focused on young people. But I said to him, I was like, it's totally cool. Like, what I want you to do when you start using social media, put a timer on for 5 minutes. And at the end of that 5 minutes, just notice if you feel better or you feel worse. Because if you feel better, then totally keep going. If you feel worse, then hey, it's time to turn it off and do something else. Because it can be, you can get enjoyment from it, and that's totally cool. But what he was noticing was like, he would do it for hours and he would feel worse. Yeah. And so we just put a timer on it and was like, hey, you get to choose at the end of this 5 minutes what you want to do.
I want to turn that into the challenge for the person listening right now, because I think everyone, no matter how far they're into their career or how early they're into it, they can benefit from this exercise. And I've seen a lot of ways, scroll through videos and then see how you are. But I feel like 5 minutes is the perfect amount that gives you rational time to see and explore, and at the same time decide whether you're feeling better or not. So if the person listening will go on social media the next time, just turn on your timer for 5 minutes and notice how you're feeling. Be present with yourself after it starts ringing, and don't just put it on repeat, and see if it actually made you feel better and you learned something potentially educational, or you didn't. I think this is very reassuring to me as well, because it often is very a diverse time when I can go into social media feeling very motivated and encouraged and leave completely opposite, or the other way around, because of the content that I see. So the algorithm is always changing, but this gives you something so you can take back that control and that power. And because you talked to me about choice, I'm very curious if I can take you back in time to when you were my age, when you were 17, and if you could talk to your younger self again, if the one advice that you would give yourself would be to be more present and to make better choices, or if it would be something else.
I had no awareness of this when I was 17.
Okay.
Right? Like I was plowing along. I was working hard. I really enjoyed it. I was seeing success at least in the way my brain was working. Mm-hmm. And I felt great about what I was doing, right? I think, however, that being said, again, I would have liked to have some advice of just being more aware, right? Because it was this element of like, I was just on autopilot. Yeah. And things were working, right? Like I got into MIT, I was on the junior national team, like things were going well. I felt good about myself. But it was all externally validated things, right? And that is great and it works until it doesn't work, until you're in an environment where you can't get that. And it happens. It will always happen. But I think just even cultivating the awareness of what's going on up here, mm-hmm. and like, when do you feel good? When do you not feel good? Those are like, that's the easiest way. And like, literally you can get an app. There's an app out there called Same Here. And it's basically just like you rate your emotions on a scale of 7, and you can write down like, this is what I'm doing, right? Like there's lots of those. And so just starting there for folks is an easy way to start turning on the lights of self-awareness, which 90 to 95% of people say they're self-aware when only 10 to 15% actually are. And so that skill in itself will make you a better leader and also will lead you to higher levels of success in your whole life.
You've shocked me completely. are really 90% of people declaring themselves aware and actually only 15% of them?
Yep, Dr. Tasha Eurich talks
Wow.
about it in her book, Insight. And if you go to her website, actually, you can take a free assessment. So you'll take it about yourself and then you send it to a friend or family member who takes it about you, and it'll give you like a rating, how aware of you of yourself internally, and then how aware of you are about yourself externally, which are the two types of self-awareness.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. You made me think about something else about your previous reply when you were talking, about the traditional concept, the traditional role that you should be pursuing as soon as you finished your bachelor degree that doesn't apply anymore. I've got my own parents talking to me about as soon as I finish high school and move on to university, I can start looking for my own house that I couldn't buy, start building a family. And in reality, it's physically so much more challenging than it was, a generation later where now taxes on houses are so much higher and to grow a child is a lot more demanding in today's world. So I think there's a new role that should be implemented, and that's just follow your dreams and follow your passion. And at the end, ultimately everyone has their own path, and you're making me feel so much more okay with myself on the times that I feel like I'm not performing at my 100% because I'm only human. There I say it. And it's perfectly incorporated, and it makes you feel a lot more connected with the world around you once you admit it. And I want to take you now to the world of your elite athletics career, because also, coaching Olympians and CEOs has made you gain so much more broad knowledge, really, about more industries. And I want to ask you about high performers and how they think differently in moments of chaos. How can one begin to train that mindset?
It's exactly that. Right. And let me give you an example. So I worked with a client last year and he was a venture capitalist, and he came to me and he was scared of public speaking, which is like totally normal. Right. And he said like, I'm great at speaking in front of my group, my own team, everything feels fine. But when I get in front of the board, the CEO, the executives, if I can't even do a conference, I will stand up there and I will forget what I'm supposed to say. I'll have some version of like a panic attack, like words won't come out of my mouth and like I'll be sweating. And he had, in 6 weeks after we started working together, he had a presentation where he was going to present his portfolio companies in front of the executives, the CEO, and the board of his venture capital company. Totally normal. But there's the difference, right? There's somebody who, it's context. He can speak just fine in front of his team. He can speak just fine in front of a group of folks that he considers are his equals or his colleagues. But when they're quote unquote higher up the food chain, that's when his brain shuts off. And so there's like the panic. There's a part that goes, hey, maybe you're not good enough, or you shouldn't be in this conversation, or whatever that is, right? That's where we worked. I didn't need to help him with his content. He was just great at doing that. Where we needed to work for 6 weeks was, how do we get control of the part that doesn't trust him to speak in front of others and doesn't think that maybe he doesn't belong, or he's not good enough, or he's going to make a mistake, or he's going to say something stupid, right? That's where the work is. And it's not about, like, part of it, yeah, it is reps. Like, the more you speak in front of groups, this, the less you feel anxious. Like, I don't feel very anxious anymore. I mean, obviously, if I'm speaking in front of 5,000 people, yeah, but when I go out and I do a talk in front of 100 people, I do this all the time. It's what I do. You probably aren't nervous when you're on a podcast, right? Reps is part of it, but before we can get the reps, we need to get confident and trust ourselves. And that's the internal. And you can do this a few different ways. Happy to help, obviously, anyone listening, but it's like part of it is start to unpacking and looking at, why am I nervous? The other part is you can build and do reps either by visualizing it, or now, which is another cool tool, is like using like a VR, right? And so if you can get, like, I've seen some of the NFL players, they do VR reps on being a quarterback, And so it's like it actually in your brain trains you to respond in the way that you want. And then, of course, it's a low risk environment, right? So you could, I don't know, if you're doing a public speaking, like maybe you can get an audience or something in VR and do your talk. And then it's like you're doing it to real people.
It's really innovative. Sounds amazing. And so cool to be able to, use technology for your own benefit and to your advantage in such a brilliant and effective way. I want to take you deeper onto that and ask you in particular more about moments of crisis and moments where we're just under pressure. How can we lead from anywhere in the seat, in the audience where we are with formal authority?
So this is about confidence and clarity in who you are and trusting yourself. Again, there's a big caveat to this. If you're in a workplace that does not value you, or they're very tight on this is the hierarchy, or the manager or the environment is toxic, right? It may not be safe for you to share an opinion. I was in that position early in my career, right? I shared an opinion many times that was against the opinion of my manager, even though I was like, well, this is what the data says, right? This is what science says, right? However, that doesn't necessarily matter to those folks, right? So that's the caveat, right? Is you have to be very aware of who's in your environment. How do they respond to things? The other thing is, but internally, it's here, right? Do I feel like I'm an imposter? Do I feel like I don't have anything good to add in terms of value? How do I feel? And if I feel, and if I can get clear on this is the value I'm adding, and actually for a lot of Gen Zs, like when I'm working with folks, they want to hear from you because they don't know about social media. They don't know about AI. They don't know about I get a lot of questions like, how do I work with these Gen Zs, right?
Yeah.
They want to hear from you. Now, does this mean you should stand up in front of 500 people and be like, hey, you're doing it wrong? No, don't do that. But in the right context, right? Like you can totally go to your manager and go like, hey, I know we just onboarded like a couple new folks. Do you want me to help you navigate them, or do you want me to talk to them? Or like these are the conversations that you should be having, because not only is it going to help you in your career, it's also going to help your manager and your leaders.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all going full circle now with confidence and self-clarity about being aware of your surroundings and of yourself and taking that leap of faith and going to talk to, the board that might feel very intimidating at first. But once you realize at the end of the day, we're all human and they're all people, it narrows it down and it makes it slightly less overwhelming. Can I ask you, Rob, now about your personal favorites, advices, habits, and routines that you've developed over the past few years, especially which helps you tackle chaos and the self-confidence and clarity?
Yeah. The first one, I mentioned it, right? Is I'm human is a very quick way to get back to just noticing. Of course, you can go a little bit deeper. I'm happy to share with you so you can send it to your listeners is I have a 4-minute exercise. It's kind of a meditation. It just allows you to check in and listen to what's going on in your mind. And once you start listening, that's when you'll understand. And you can also, what I always coach folks to do is it's not about arguing with the voices in your mind, right? And it's just like, imagine you had a best friend and they were like, hey, Sonia, I disagree with you. We should, instead of going to this college, we should pick this one, or we should pick this degree, right? You're not going to be like, hey, you're wrong.
Yeah, absolutely not.
And so it's just the same conversation in your mind is you can just think about it as another person. It's actually a younger version of you, but you can think about it as that is like, how would you respond to somebody that you know? You listen to them, you give them some empathy, and you go, hey, you know what? This is what I'm choosing because I am the leader of me. That's really the tip. The more you cultivate that, the more trust you will gain. And then also, like, as these things work out, that's the more trust you gain and you feed that back into your system. So it's just like for you, for this podcast, hey, you asked, some phenomenal guest like Oliver asked, who was on a few weeks ago, right? Then it's like, he said yes. Oh, okay. Hey, this is working. And then you start cultivating the inner trust. And once you have the inner trust, then literally everything opens up. And that's like what, for me, it took the inner trust to be like, oh yeah, I can move. I can switch careers. I can do a TED Talk. I can write a book. I can, do these things that are far beyond what I would have done 5 years ago.
And especially once you, hone your inner trust, then you can be able to step forwards and also see how much you're capable of just by sticking to something day after day, adding brick by brick to your goal. And in that way, I can see yourself publishing a book and scaling up your business and making your experience relevant to a higher audience and a much, more qualified and experienced one that can listen to your experiences that you've lived through in your life and apply them to theirs, and everyone will benefit from it. I wanted to ask you now, because you have this newsletter where if you sign up, you get 2 free chapters of your book. If you're up for a 60-second challenge to persuade the reader as to why Capitalize on Chaos might be the book for them, especially if they've started a company or are currently an employee in one.
Chaos is at unprecedented levels, politically, economically, with technology and AI. If you don't get control of what's going on inside your mind, not only are you going to be ineffective in your life, you're also going to be an ineffective leader. The stats are in the book. This book is not just a book about leadership. It's about personal transformation, and it allows you to do exactly what I'm talking about on this show, is build that inner trust so you can do whatever you want. Mm-hmm. You don't have to move to Costa Rica. You don't have to do a TED Talk. You don't have to write a book, right? Mm-hmm. But you can choose the life that you want to live and do it in a way that won't be like you're pushing a boulder up a hill. It'll feel not comfortable, but it'll feel more natural. It'll feel easier. You'll have clarity, and your impact will be greater because of it. And so go to robkalwarowsky.com. You can put your email in the box and you'll get the first 2 chapters. And of course, the book will be available on August 18th for purchase. So I'd love to have you have a copy.
Absolutely. Rob, I want to take you now into the traditions on the SMARTA podcast here, specifically the first about the world of literature, and ask you, in the series of books that you've read, what would be the top 2 that stand out that you would say completely changed your perspective through which you view life?
First book for me is No Bad Parts by Dr. Richard Schwartz. Mm-hmm. And so Dr. Schwartz invented internal family systems therapy, and I use this in my coaching practice. It was also instrumental for me to overcome the chaos in my own mind. And what he talks about is this concept of parts, and it's the voices you hear in your mind. Mm-hmm. And if you've seen the movie Inside Out or Inside Out 2, yeah, right? It's very similar to that idea where there are different parts of you that are telling you different things in different moments, and they take control. And self-leadership is about you controlling them, not in a controlling negative way, but it's like you're the captain or the coach of the team and you're putting them in when you need them. And then you're taking them out when you don't need them anymore. And that book will, 1, is fundamentally change how you see yourself in the world. Mm-hmm. And 2 is give you exercises where you can start to learn that and apply that in your own life. Second book for me is The 7 Rules of Power by Jeffrey Pfeffer. Jeffrey Pfeffer is a professor at Stanford Business School, and his course on power is the #1 course. It's always sold out, everything. Mm-hmm. I wish I would have had this book when I was entering the workforce, because it would have completely changed how I would have behaved. It completely changed how I think about organizations and how I think about success or achieving success. And I use it with folks, like the principles from this book, everywhere from individual performers to literally CEOs. And there's lessons in there. I mean, the first lesson's about mindset, which is obviously, this is what I do mostly. But the other things are like how do you curate your own brand or your own message? And I don't mean you have to do this on LinkedIn, even internally in a company. How do you set up an environment where you are the one with the authority? And so Sonia has applied this, right? Is she's set up a platform where very high level experts are joining her show. And now she's the center of a community of experts, right? Then it's about, using power, exploring power, and branding yourself as the expert yourself or as someone powerful. And so I would recommend this book absolutely, because career is not just about working hard and putting your head down. Career is about people and navigating people. And that book shows you there are 7 steps, and it shows you how to do that effectively so you can achieve more in your life.
I wanted to actually say that No Bad Parts was one of the first self-help and nonfiction books I've bought myself after watching, I think, a YouTube video about becoming more present and in your everyday life and more connected to yourself and getting to know yourself at the end better. And I have it up there on my shelf next to The Alchemist, and I didn't actually get a chance to finish it. Right before I bring you back to how we started the podcast, I wanted to bring you to the second tradition that we have here on the SMARTA Podcast, which is where I asked my previous guest to leave a question for the next one. And in this case, Juan Bendaña has this question left over for you to answer. What would you try this year if you had 1% more confidence?
To be honest, I am trying everything. Yeah, because of the work I do here, right? And so, like, literally, I'm going on a book tour in the fall, and I'm planning on going skydiving, even though I had a big fear of heights, but it's been something that along with the self-trust, has actually worked. And then another thing that I'm going to do in September, actually, as part of my my keynotes, is I'm setting up a stunt where I'm going to walk through fire. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, this is what I'm doing in September, by the way, walking on fire. Keep your fingers crossed. You're going to rock it. I'm sure of it. And it sounds amazing, Also, it's very funny because my mom this morning asked me if I were to do 7 things with her together next year, as crazy as I can think of, what would they be? And my first reply that I told her was skydiving.
Yeah.
And I'm just building on my bucket list now. And that you mentioned this in the fall. It's just very, very funny. And I had to bring it up. Rob Kalwarowsky, thank you so much for being on the SMARTA Podcast. And just before you leave, I want to bring you back to, if you could talk with a person listening right now, how would you want to leave your end message with them?
Thanks for having me on the show. And
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, for folks out there, right, it's the awareness, and then the awareness allows you to use the tool of I'm human. And that's where you're going to start making changes internally, and it's going to unlock choice for you, right? Where I want you to leave it is notice I'm human, then respond appropriately and make the choice for yourself, because you know what's best for you and you just have to listen.
Just completely unwind and relax. Thank you so much, Rob, for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Sonia, and continued success. You're doing amazing work.
Thank you. Best of luck with capitalizing on chaos on August 18th. Thank you so much for being on here and sharing your wisdom with my audience.
Thank you.
Now that I'm more present, I can tell you fully that just reminding yourself from time to time that you're human and getting a couple of moments aside from your work day, let's say, especially when you're very busy throughout the mornings or even noons, just to breathe 5 times and become more aware of how your body feels. And you'll instantly feel a shift in the way you perceive life and the way you can tackle any obstacle that comes your way. And finally, if nobody told you this before, I want to be the first to tell you that I truly believe in your ability to create the life of your dreams. I'm Sonia Marta, and this is the SMARTA Podcast. See you next Monday.